Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Doug Poland. I'm an attorney at the law firm of Rathje Woodward and chair of the Downtown Madison, Inc. Board of Directors. Thank you for joining us for our virtual May What's Up Downtown breakfast. Although not the same as our in-person events, we do hope that this virtual venue will provide members the opportunity to stay engaged and informed during these times, and that we'll be back to gathering at the beautiful Edgewater Hotel in the not so distant future. For this morning's event, we are thrilled to welcome Deb Archer, President and CEO of Destination Madison, and Zach Brandon, President of the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce, alongside our own DMI President, Jason Ilstrup, to talk about business reopening and recovery in Madison due to COVID-19. Before we get into our program, I wanted to say a couple of words. First of all, thanks to all of you, our members and the attendees today, for keeping yourselves safe during this time, for keeping your family safe, your businesses safe, taking care of your neighbors, and caring for your communities. Madison has really come together in a very remarkable way, and you, the members of DMI and our friends and our community partners are the reason for that. Second, as we move from sheltering in place to the first phase of reopening, I want to say a brief word about how DMI has functioned over the past almost 3 months. DMI has really done a very good job of staying vital in this time. We've transitioned from primarily meeting in person, being sort of a focal point for people coming together physically. We've done a tremendous job. DMI has done a tremendous job of transitioning into meeting virtually. We're actually running all of the programs that we typically run and even more, and we're seeing even greater attendance at the virtual meetings we've been holding than we had at the in-person meetings. This is really primarily due to a number of different people that I want to thank. First of all, I want to say thanks to you, our members. You have continued to communicate with one another. You've continued to really be the community that DMI is. And so thanks very much to you for doing that. Thanks also to our sponsors, those who support us financially. DMI is in a strong financial position. We are continuing to function now. We will be continuing to function through the end of the year in a position of financial strength. So we will continue to be able to bring the kind of programming that we have brought, the kind of virtual events that we've brought, and networking that we've brought for the past few months. Thanks also to our partners in the community, like the Greater Madison Chamber of Commerce and Destination Madison. We have really relied at DMI on our partners in the community, different organizations and different people that we work with on a regular basis. Together, we really have made a stronger community through this time. And finally, and probably most importantly, I do want to say thank you to the DMI staff. The DMI staff has been phenomenal through over the past 3 months. They have done tremendous work. We have really transitioned almost seamlessly, completely seamlessly, from working entirely in person to working entirely virtually. And that is mostly due to the incredible work of the DMI staff. And so thank you to Jason Ilstrup, John Trenelia, Carol Ann Hewitt, and Madeline Plummer for the wonderful, wonderful job that you have done. If we were all together, I would ask everyone to give you a round of applause, and just so the staff knows that everyone who is participating over video is right now giving you that applause. Finally, before we hear from our panel, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our major series sponsor, Whipfly LLP, our supporting series sponsors, Ho Chunk Gaming Madison, Michael Best and Friedrich, and State Bank of Cross Plains, and special contributors, the Edgewater Hotel and UW Health, Unity Point Health Meritor, and Quartz for their support of DMI and Downtown Madison. I would also like to thank today's rotating monthly sponsor, Boardman & Clark LLP. We greatly appreciate Boardman & Clark for their support of today's program and would like to welcome Allison Helen, attorney at Boardman & Clark and member of the DMI Board of Directors, to briefly say a few words. Allison will be followed by Brian Gaumont, representing Whipfly LLP, followed by DMI President Jason Ilstrup to introduce our panel. Thank you and welcome, Allison.
Thank you, Doug. Can everybody hear me? Hopefully. Okay. Good morning. So it is a pleasure for me to welcome you to this program on behalf of Boardman & Clark. For those of you that don't know a lot about our firm, we are actually one of Madison's oldest law firms, tracing our roots back about 140 years. So although we work with clients on local, regional, national, and global matters, we're still very proud to call Madison home and to be a very active member of the Madison community. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to sponsor, and we look forward to it. And I want to echo Doug's comments too, as a board member of DMI. The transition has been seamless and the level of organization has been amazing. So, obviously the last few months have been quite a challenge, and we're still working towards what will be some sort of a new normal. And for those of us like me that spend a lot of their professional life working with business clients, it's obviously been a challenging time, and we've seen clients calling and emailing at all times of the day with stress regarding not only the economic uncertainty, but also just the ever-changing guidance and the ever-changing programming available to kind of help them navigate this economic time. And I have to say, DMI, Greater Madison Chamber, Dan by Local, and some of our local organizations have just done a phenomenal job, not only of marshaling resources, but really collaborating together to bring resources to businesses, and also to give a forum to advisors like me and others that work with businesses on pulling our resources together to really figure out what we can do to help businesses in our community move forward. So I wanted to just take a moment to thank Jason, thank Zach, thank Deb, and thank everybody else that's really been working 24/7 in the community to bring these resources together and pull us forward and get us through this. So we will get through this. It may take a while, but it will happen, and we're very lucky to live in a community with the resources that we have. So thank you for letting us sponsor, and I look forward to the panel.
Hi, good morning, everyone. This is Brian Gomot with Wipfli. Thank you, Allison. Thank you, Doug, for the kind words. And I'm going to have to do the same and echo you in thanking Jason and John and Caroline and the whole DMI team on the amazing work that they've done. I know that the What's Up Downtown Breakfast series has always been something that, I make a staple in my life, and is sort of a comfort thing for me, if you will, and it brings great information. So to bring that programming to us, even in this, kind of world of digital connectivity, really, really appreciative of all the work that they've done. So Wipfli is the major sponsor of the What's Up Downtown Breakfast series, and we are a CPA firm, one of the nation's leading CPA firms, doing consulting work and audit and tax and other business consulting services. I think one thing that we've learned, like many of you, probably all of you, is that the word resilience just kind of took a whole new meaning, or at least took it to a whole new level. And how we do our work has certainly changed, and where we do our work has certainly changed. But I know one thing that has stayed consistent is our commitment to our clients and our staff and our communities, and making sure that they are creating lasting positive impact. And through the COVID crisis, we know there's yet another transition. There would be many transitions yet to come. And whether it's reopening, ramping up, or refocusing, depending upon what your business or your organization does, it may be a combination of all three of those. That's been work that we've been really proud to be a part of, along with our clients, in helping them reposition, reopen, ramp up for their next phase of their business. So that's been something that we've really been proud to contribute to. And it's one of those things that we can't predict the future. All we can do is look at the what if scenarios and plan for the things that are most likely to happen. And we know there are going to be those curveballs and those unlikely situations, or those things we just can't predict, but at least we can plan for the things that we do have control over. And the last thing I do want to mention is I'm a partner in the nonprofit practice, and I've been incredibly proud to be a member of this community always, but seeing what's happened over the last 2.5 months, whether it be the support and a massive amount of support for the Boys and Girls Club and the United Way. Forget exactly what the numbers were, but it was over $2.5 million raised in just a handful of weeks, or any other organization. The support from this community, the membership of DMI has been amazing to those organizations. So From the bottom of my heart and Wipfli's, thank you for all of the work that you've done to support our local nonprofit organizations. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, to our second ever virtual What's Up Downtown breakfast. Can I thank all 200 of you for joining us today. We're very excited to have an important panel with a couple of great civic leaders, Zach Brandon and Deb Archer. But first, I want to say a huge thank you to Brian and to Allison and to Doug for your kind words, but more importantly, for all of your incredible leadership during this time. What Boardman, what Wipfli has done has been outstanding in helping businesses through this very difficult time. So thank you for all of your work. We're very excited to be able to partner with you, and thank you for your continued support of Downtown Madison, Inc. Today, we're going to have a discussion about COVID-19 in business. It's going to be a very good discussion with two great leaders in our community, really talking about what's happening on the ground right now. Before we get started, though, we have a couple of housekeeping items we want to go over. We are recording this podcast, and so it will be available to any of you on our YouTube channel coming up very soon. And we do want your questions. We want this to be a discussion. Even though it's virtual, we still want this to be a discussion. And so please submit your questions just below in the Q&A function of Zoom, and I will ask those questions of our panelists. This morning, again, we are very excited to have this discussion with two very important business leaders. The goal this morning for us is to discuss where the business community has been and what's been happening with the business and nonprofit community over the last 3 months. Where are we today and where are we going in the future? And I think there's no better people to have that discussion than my two friends and colleagues here this morning. So first, I want to introduce Deb Archer. Deb Archer is the president and CEO of Destination Madison. Deb, how are you doing this morning?
Well, I am great. I am happy to be here and happy to be here with two incredible colleagues who we've been working through this storm together, and it's been a great collegial group to be a part of, and I'm happy to be part of this morning.
Deb, thank you. Feel completely the same way. And I love your background. Your background of public gardens is much better than the background of my sun porch, where because I'm so loud, my wife has sent me off to the sun porch because of how loud I am communications. Next up, we are very thankful to have our friend and colleague from the Greater Madison Chamber, the president, Zach Brandon. Zach, how are you doing this morning?
Good, Jason. How are you?
Good, good. We're doing well. So again, today the discussion is about where have we been, where are we today, and where are we headed in the future. I'm also going to participate. Again, my name is Jason Ilstrup, and I'm the president of Downtown Madison, Inc. So we want to start the discussion today. Where have the business and the nonprofits been over the last 3 months? How much, and a question to all of us, how much has COVID-19 impacted business and tourism since it came on in early March? And start with either Zach or Deb, whichever one wants to go first.
Well, I'll pop in because when you mention the word tourism, I guess that my hat goes on right away. So I think everybody knows that, you know, March 13th was sort of the witching hour when everything started to collapse for our industry. That's what the weekend before the WIA boys basketball, and everything started to cascade pretty quickly when the orders were to be safer at home, which we certainly understood, and clients understood, although it was difficult. And then I think the upshot of the events canceling were the businesses that were immediately impacted. I think probably hotels immediately, because people couldn't stay overnight, and then people needed to go home. And then all of our wonderful restaurants, businesses, retailers followed suit by having to shutter in order to allow their employees to be safer at home. And it was a pretty quick nosedive. And I think initially we all thought, oh, maybe it'll be like 9/11, it'll be a quick V recovery. But I think we knew pretty quickly that it's going to be a longer W-shaped probably recovery than a quick V shape. But we are surviving, and we'll talk a little later about what we've been doing as an organization, but certainly want to let both of you talk about what you saw reacting in terms of the immediate aftermath of the safer at home.
I think one of the things that my guess is that many people on today's program know the story, but just in case you don't, I'll tell the story, is that these three organizations, Destination Madison, DMI, and the Chamber, came together and put out a survey on March 11th. So Deb said the witching hour of the 13th, which was right. I mean, it was really the trigger point for most businesses. But these three organizations were able to put our list together. When you think about membership organizations and the divisions, the separations, the sometimes lack of trust that occurs, these three organizations merged our lists, deduped them, and then were able to select the highest ranking person in every organization and sent out a business survey that got into the field 2 to 3 days before the state orders came out. And that speed at which we moved gave us some insight as a community. And the biggest of those, and I know Deb and Jason and we've talked about this many times about what are the things that we learned in that early survey. But the thing that I think was the most telling was that 76% of the businesses that responded, and we reached out to 1,500 plus businesses, didn't have a plan for this. And that's not to say you should have, because none of us had plans for it. The Chamber didn't have a plan for something, for an infectious disease plan. But knowing that 76% of our collective membership didn't have a plan, and that even those in the 24%, 89% of them weren't communicating that plan with their employees previously, we knew we had a lot of work to do. We knew that we were going to have to spin up platforms that we had never envisioned. We knew that one-to-one communications were going to be inefficient. We knew that one-to-many communications like email blasts were going to be ineffective. And so we knew we needed different things and different platforms. And that I'm proud of that. I think that because of that, our businesses, our collective membership have had an opportunity to see a bit into the crystal ball. We can't predict the future, but we can help guide our path forward in that. And so what we've seen from businesses, and obviously we're a regional chamber, and so we go Dodgeville to Waterloo, Baraboo to Rock County, and there's been stories of heartbreak and stories that are heartening. You hear companies that email us and say we're going out of business, and companies that say we've completely pivoted and we're producing the swabs necessary to conduct COVID-19 tests. And so it's been a range of things, but it has affected every single business and every single person in this region, across this country and across the world. But as Deb said, and Jason said, and Doug said, I'm immensely proud of the partnership that's been formed historically with these three organizations, but where we stand today, I know that we're in a better position to recover because of the work that we've done leading up to this.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Deb, please.
One of the things I wanted to add about that early work that I think it's important for the community to know is we looked at each other and said, there's so much work to do here. Let's not be duplicating what's doing. And so wherever our strengths were, that's where we would focus. So if someone had a strength in one area, we would say, go run with it. We'll stay in our lanes, because the last thing we needed to do, and we need to continue to do, is try to be in an area that where we don't belong. So we just stay on mission and support the other entity that can keep moving things forward in their lane.
Yeah, I think what's been heartening for me too is that partnership started early and has continued. We are meeting consistently. I don't know if these two they're this way for me, are excited about meeting with me almost every day on Zoom, and because I think my energy still comes through the screen. But maybe they have a few more headaches, but I really enjoyed that partnership because, again, it does allow us to stay in our lane. I wanted to quickly address the impacts downtown. Obviously, Deb and Zach have brought it up. It's affected so many businesses, particularly in hospitality and leisure. But some of these businesses that are so important to downtown also are retail, right? Retail sales went down 9% total in America from February to March. That's the second largest dip in the history of America. Restaurant spending right now is down 60%. And, we have so many great independent restaurants. And one of the parts of that 60% is 3 out of every $4 right now are being spent at non-independent restaurants, are being spent at chain restaurants. And so for us to really keep that unique and interesting and vibrant small business focused downtown, there is a lot of work to do. One of the questions that I wanted to ask you guys is, what we're seeing downtown is an acceleration of existing economic trends that were already happening, right? retail stores were closing at very high levels in 17 and 19. Online delivery and delivery economies were sort of moving forward already. To me, it seems like it's been an acceleration of existing trends already taken place. How have you guys seen that in both of the industries that you work with most?
I agree. I think it's actually accelerated a couple or many and disrupted a couple as well. I think that we were of the mind that if you think back to the 80s and 90s, that local retail was really disrupted by big box retail, and then along came Amazon and the online economy and disrupted big box. And our hope was that the differentiator for local retail would be the ability to create experiential opportunities. The idea that experiences matter, and that what you can't get online is the ability to engage with the owner, to talk to the shopkeeper, to touch the product, to compare it to something else. And this I think has slowed down that trend, which was a trend that we were bullish on. I think that co-working spaces has been a trend that we've seen a lot of progress in. I think this is a risky time for co-working spaces as we think about what does space mean and where do we work from. But I do agree. I think that there's been a slow evolution, particularly amongst our larger members, around work from home or remote work. Some of our largest employers in this region, some had almost zero remote work. And went to 100% remote work, and some had been at 25, 30%, but really thought about maybe I'll add a couple percentage points every year, but I'll never get more than 50%. And those companies now are 95, 98% remote work, and many of them aren't planning on coming back anytime soon. A lot of our largest employers in this region are saying Labor Day, and some are planning for what an end of the year return would look like. And the risk to that is what it does downstream in the rest of the economy. If we think about retail localized, and we think about restaurants localized, you need traffic and bodies and engagement and energy. And so I've said this to Jason and Deb, but I'll say it out loud, I'm frustrated when I hear people say that the economy is like a light switch, or the economy is a dial, one you turn on and off, and one you just turn up whenever you need to. The economy is a complex set of mechanisms, like an engine, that requires everything to run together in order to work. And I think some of the trends that we're seeing are exciting. I think some of them are scary. I think some of them are problematic to our long-term recovery if we don't get in front of them.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right in all those areas. I think in the travel industry and the tourism industry, the big concern from a lodging perspective in the last 10 years has been the growth of Airbnb, and I think that industry is going to take a big hit because of this, and that hotels in the long run probably will benefit because I think people will be a little leery of staying in private homes when you're looking for safety, security, and hygiene. So again, there are trends that are now being disrupted and could change trends, that were pretty bullish. And I think we're going to see the aftermath of that in good ways and bad ways.
In the last few days, obviously on the 26th, they announced the phase 1 forward game plan. That sort of takes us into where we are today. I'd love to hear from where you guys think in the tourism industry for Deb, and then for general business for Zach. Where do you think businesses stand today as we've entered this phase 1 of forward game?
I think two things. I think confusion, because I think it's difficult. The plan, I know, really thoughtful, but you can't clearly convey every nuance of every one of the conditions. And so I think there's a lot of clarification that people are still looking for. And I also think for certain businesses to operate at a really low capacity, it may not be profitable for them to do so. And so I think some people are frustrated that certain establishments aren't opening, but at 25% capacity, by the time you are heating and cooling your building and firing up all your utilities and bringing people back, it just may not pay off. And so I think we have to be patient. And I think that's hard. I think as consumers, we have to be patient. But as business owners, I think they're less patient because they're so eager to get back to doing what they love, making a living, and putting people back to work. And that's what, we look forward to, are getting people back to work, because that will start signifying that the economy is coming back, is when people are reemployed.
It's what I want to say is the plan is thoughtful, as both of you said. It's also infinitely better than it was when it was in draft form. And I don't know that the public and the business community will really know the work that was done by these organizations. Late night calls, weekend Zooms, lots of emails. But none of that would have been possible without the trust of public health and the mayor and the county exec to share early documents, to share early thinking. That there are places in the document that are still unclear, but I do believe it's infinitely clearer, and I think it gives a sense of direction. It was so clear that 5 days before the actual order, we were calling that it was going to happen on the 26th. The chamber said, you have to take a risk with us. We can't promise you this, but everything is looking like it will start on the 26th. And I think that's the kind of predictability that we need. If you think about what we're trying to balance public health, which a lot of the effort in this community, every business that shut down, everybody who worked from home, everybody who isolated themselves, wore a mask, wore gloves, whatever the activities were that we did to physically distance ourselves in order to stop the spread and not overwhelm our healthcare system, was done in the name of public health. But the other balancing piece to that is the economy. And this is about turning the economy back on, still prioritizing and keeping public health in the forefront, but we have to be able to start to balance that. We have to be able to do two things at once. And all of that is based on a belief that you've got to create public trust, public confidence. I think what's happening at the state level, or what happened at the state level, nothing's happening at the state level really anymore. What's happening at the federal level, where people are using partisanship to create vacuums around what we should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing, who should we believe, who do we trust? That actually undermines that public confidence, because some portion of the population doesn't know who to trust. And my hope is, Deb's 100% right, is 25% for most businesses is not workable. I think the reason to open is to start to test the model. How does it work? Are people, are your employees able to navigate the process? But I do think the most important thing that we can be doing by turning back on our businesses and in the economy is to build that public confidence, both employee confidence and the consumer confidence, to say, okay, I'm used to doing this again, right? This feels natural to me. And once you do it once and you tell somebody else about it, I got a haircut the other day, I told Jason all about it. We went through details, everything that happened. And that kind of sharing, I think, creates confidence in buyer behavior. I also hope that if you think about innovation models, and on one hand you have the early adopter, and on the other you have the late majority, right? So there's some portion of the population that will run out and buy the newest iPhone. They'll always want to be on the cutting edge of whatever's new and whatever the new activity is. And then you have that sort of early majority, and those are the early adopters. You have the early majority who are waiting to see, is it safe? I want to do this, but I want to get feedback first. And then you have that late adopter, or the late majority, who really want to be told that this is something that's good and safe. And my hope is that in the innovation models, that's roughly 20%, 30%, and 30%. And then the rest are kind of on the edges. There's what they call laggards, and there's what they call the introducers. But in that middle piece, my hope is that 25% capacity matches with the early adopters, people who are ready to get out, who are willing to go out and maybe have to stand in line in the rain, are going to maybe have to wear masks, may have to not be able to sit at their favorite table. My hope is that as we progress from phase 1 to phase 2 to phase 3, and we believe those can happen in quick succession, as long as we do our part on public health, that we're actually going to be able to time this with consumer behavior. Because I think we all saw that even though the economy opened up on the 26th, there weren't lines, 5 blocks long of people waiting to go to a restaurant or get their haircut. People still need that confidence to know that it's safe, and it's the right thing to do.
I think that idea of consumer behaviors is super important because we're starting to see nationally trends where things that have happened over the last 3 months are already being cemented in people's minds of what's right and what's wrong in these businesses, particularly retail restaurant locations. And it's just as Zach said, we talked about his haircut for quite some time. I will admit it was a very nice haircut, so that was part of the conversation. But it was talking about like how he was interacting, how he wasn't waiting in the lobby space. People are really watching how businesses are reacting to COVID-19 and what steps, but really their staff are safe. And I think this is critically important for us as business leaders to make sure that we continue to provide those resources so they have the resources to say, hey, we're doing X, Y, and Z, right? We're cleaning this ever so often. We're all wearing masks. We're doing all these things. Just as we saw with the mayor this week going downtown and really making sure to say, hey, look, we can create confidence that the businesses that we're going to are having success. And Deb's right, though, 25% is difficult. But I think once we get to 50, I think it's a different sort of scenario. But you also see very positive things, like we saw in the paper this morning, Dean Mosman's story about outdoor dining. And let's continue to think creatively about how, look, things aren't going to necessarily change in one day, right? This pandemic is with us for quite some time. It's changed consumer behaviors already. And so we then need to react, just as Zach is saying about innovating. And one way to do that is to use public space in a better way. And that opens up the outdoor space to say, wait, I could be confident. I can sit at a picnic table. I'm still well far from people that I don't know. And it starts to create more confidence. Because, as far as I've always seen it, the government didn't shut down the economy. The pandemic itself, shut down the economy, the virus itself, and it just took confidence this way, not just the economy this way. And it's going to take time to build it back up. But if we're creative downtown, which I think we need to be in dense spaces, then I think people really will come back. So I think that leads us to that next question of, how can Madison really maximize that recovery? I think we're in a really good position. But are there certain strategies that we should be implementing to try to move this forward more and more quickly?
I think we have to be really intentional. And we, as all the people on this call, we're all civic leaders in our own right. And we have investments in this community. I think we have to act intentionally about helping move into these phases. I think that we need businesses to hold small meetings. We need to encourage people to go into their offices when they're ready. I think we need to really step forward and lean into all of this so we can help lead. We are leaders and we need to lean in and lead into this economy. And that means participating in the phases and coming forward and participating.
Yeah, Deb's 100% right. It's the analogy that we use is if you've ever seen a big tent, like a golf tent or a circus tent or an event tent go up, it's kind of how you rebuild an economy. And Jason's right. Most of the GDP loss wasn't because of government order. Most of the GDP loss was because consumer behavior said, I just don't feel safe, right? I don't know who to trust. I don't know what to do. And I've said to just about any elected official that I talk to, you don't get credit for turning off the economy, right? One, you didn't, your order only had so much impact, but you don't get credit for turning off the economy. It's not that hard, right? You issue an order, people get scared, people get confused, people get worried. What you do get credit for is maybe the speed at which you brought it down so that you can protect public health. But most of what history will look back on is how did you turn it back on? How were you helpful in restacking the economy? And so when you think about a big event tent and how they go up, you need those four corners of support, that rigidity that gives support to the entire platform. And those are our traditional industries, right? Those are the mainstay top line industries that have for decades driven our economy. And we need them to not just be strong and supportive, but as Deb said, we need them to participate. We need them to remain engaged. And even if they are able to say, I can extract myself from the localized economy until the end of the year, what's the damage that happens? What happens to a tent that doesn't have one of its tent poles in? And then when you think about the center tent poles that create the peaks, You know, those are important. Those are a lot of the big employers that are fast moving. You know, the technology companies that we all read about and celebrate. They create that airiness in our economy. They create space for others to move, but the tent has to be big enough as well for everybody to be inside of that tent. And so there's so many different pieces. And then the one thing that we all easily lose sight of is that when you put up a large tent, there are tie downs, there are tetherings, there are linch pins, there are different types of connectors that you wouldn't see because they're not present or prominent in the construction of the tent. But the tent comes crumbling down if they don't have it. Things like childcare. You know, there are small tethering linchpin industries that are connected that we have to make sure engage in. So I just want to highlight what Deb said, which is in order to truly stand the tent up, right? In order to build the economy, not just that we had, but the one that we aspired to have, we have to have businesses writ large engaged, and that may mean sometimes making decisions that you would say on the face are not necessarily financially logical. It may not make sense to open at 25%, but if you know you can do it for a couple of weeks to gear up to build consumer confidence so that when you get to 50%, it works. If you are able to, you know, if you think about companies that have customers already available, they have revenue, they have a ready workforce, they have the financial resources to do social distancing on their campus. We need them to make sure that they're participating in the economy, even in ways that may exaggerate the localized effect of that. And so if you're buying 89% of your goods locally, what does it look like if you go 95%? You might pay more. What does it look like if you go 98%? And so, you know, some of the things that we've been talking to companies about, which is to Deb's point, we may need you to, even if you're not sure you need to, we may need you to do some localized meetings. You know, we may need you to meet off campus. And it may take more to think through. There may be more protocols that you have to think about how that happens. There may be more conversation with your customers, your clients, your employees. But if you think long-term about the stability of this economy, it's going to need all of us to be thinking about how we push forward.
And I think that absolutely.
Yeah, please.
Absolutely. And I think the thing about so many of the local businesses and intentionally, I so appreciate so many companies that have been ordering carry out from restaurants to keep restaurants going. That is critical, and to keep doing that. Because the thing about these small businesses, and we have many layers to our economy, but the thing about the small businesses, restaurants, retailers, they are what make Madison, Madison. They're what make the personality. And if those businesses don't make it, we won't be the community where people want to move and young people want to thrive. Because if we lose those, we lose that personality. And so we need the combination of the business community thriving, and we do need to get visitors back. Because when visitors start coming back, our population can't support all these businesses that are in our community. They can't. We need both. And we need to blend. And I think that's where this collaboration between the three of us three of our organizations has been so strong, is making sure we are each holding up our piece of that tent, so to speak, and doing everything we can to keep them solid.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Deb is saying on a couple of fronts, particularly, please, we actually, as consumers, all couple hundred of us that are on, can make a difference to keep those small businesses. And I know for a fact, talking to Tiffany, the great leader of the Madison Central Business Improvement District, that these businesses are just, they need to take out. If you can order a few more times, it really does make a difference. If you can go get your soap from Soap Opera or go get your cards from Little Luxuries, it absolutely makes a difference. But I want to get back to this tent analogy, because many plans that I've seen for sort of reimagining and restarting, really, it really does make a difference with what those anchor, engaging those anchor institutions or anchor big poles in the tent, like UW, like Epic. You know, how do we make sure that those groups are successful so that, you know, they really instill confidence? And I think to Deb, and a question, sort of tying in a question as well to Peggy Gunderson, who asks, you know, about these larger events, right? How important large events are. And when will we know whether or not these large events are going to be able to happen? I think both the events and these larger institutions, anchors like UW, are crucially important to the recovery.
Well, UW, that will certainly be a flashpoint, you know, whatever their decisions are. That will be, I think, really the leader in some of these questions. In terms of when big events can come back, I think it's likely when a vaccine is back or their public health feels as though it's safe to have person-to-person gatherings, large gatherings, because that is, I think, the concern, a lightning rod for people. But our team, we canceled 57 future conventions. We've rebooked 9 of them to come in within the next year to 3 years. But our team, we're much smaller than we were when this started. But we're spending a lot of time working on ensuring we can stabilize the clients that we have, the big events we have coming in the next few years, like CrossFit didn't come this year, but making sure they come back next year. But we're still selling into the future because we believe that, we will be back next year and we will be able to keep moving forward and bringing these events back to Madison.
I think it's the one thing that we all want to know, right? It's the what will happen. What does phase 4 look like? And there's a reason why in Forward Dane, phase 4 is a bit of an enigma because it's too hard to predict. It's the virus is too unpredictable. It feels like every day we learn something new about it, sometimes positive, sometimes negative about it. Part of our model has been building large events. Our 2 largest marquee events combined are over 2,000 people. We're not planning on having those. Even though annual dinner is planned into October, we'll do it virtually. We'll do creative things that make it feel like a blend between the physical and the virtual. But I think to Peggy's question, I don't see a scenario in my conversations with public health without a vaccine, which I think is not going to happen in the fall, candidly. Herd immunity doesn't seem like it's on the horizon either, with some unpredictableness about do the antibodies stick and do we create immunity. And I think it will be one of the short-term sacrifices that we will have made as a community for the long-term ability to accelerate into the future is, those large-scale events are going to be missed, but we're not planning on. And just as Deb said, it's the smart thing to do is to start to plan for being the place for those events in the future. And we're seeing there's still demand. I know Deb's seeing it. We're seeing it. People are still bullish on Madison. On Greater Madison. People still are excited about, the shine of this region didn't wear off because of COVID-19. People are thinking about and planning for the future. But we also have to acknowledge that some of the things that we love, some of the staples of our lives, some of the things that we look forward to every year may have to take a 1-year hiatus as we plan for the future.
Absolutely. And I also think there will be a new breed of event. And we're working very hard with our facilities about what everybody's calling hybrid events, where there's a live portion and a virtual portion. We're all learning to live in this virtual world and function. And so I think we'll start seeing that in the short term. We are talking to some groups about meeting in dual facilities at the same time so that they can keep meeting, but using multiple facilities, trying to be creative and how to keep some business coming here, and also helping with the virtual meeting opportunities and technology. And fortunately, we're in a community where we can make that happen.
And I think that's Deb said innovation. I think it's an important piece of this is that just like we were talking about, Jason, with the work across the city, but specifically downtown on using outdoor spaces, expanding outdoor seating. My guess is that there's innovation that I'm certain that there's innovation in all of this that we're just starting to see. And to your point early on, Jason, that will become new trend lines and new opportunities for us as a region as well, as long as we're paying attention and our eyes wide open.
Yeah, I think that really talks about what, the three of us have had this consistent conversation about it's not really recovery, it's about reimagining and restarting. Like, what could this really look like? And I think that innovation is so key in tourism, in nonprofits, in business, and all of these things. I think, unfortunately, there's this narrative right now that density is sort of the enemy of of what's happening right now because of the pandemic. And, and I worry about that as someone that is a champion of downtown. I don't know that that's necessarily the case, right? I think the question is, will the benefits of being able to be together and the benefits of downtown, will they overcome those health-related fears? And I am very bullish on the fact that I think that cities have always been strong. They've had pandemics like this before. They've had war. They've had terrorism. And people have always continued to want to be together. And I think that that is still a really important part, and that helps us reimagine what we can look like if we still want to be in close proximity. Because, you know, Zach and Deb both know it, and they preach it from on high in all of their events, about how important it is to make connections between people. And we know, look, Zoom, this is great. It's great seeing you all, but it's not the same thing as being in the Edgewater Hotel right now and connecting with everyone. So what are we going to do to be able to sort of reimagine those places? From my perspective, downtowns just have huge advantages. And if we are creative and think about how we can pandemic proof or do all these things to make sure that the public spaces are healthy for everyone, I still feel that they're very important because you have strong transportation networks, you have advanced IT infrastructure. Downtowns are very sustainable because of their density. You've got to concentrate the most, Borden, which Deb is talking about. They have concentration of assets, jobs that Zach and I, you know, this is very important, but they have concentration of assets of shopping, of retail, of restaurant, of entertainment venues. And if we don't bring the tourists in, we wouldn't have half of these things. And Madison is a vibrant city. And I think we need to double down on our downtowns and on our main streets. So the Willie streets, the Monroe streets, and these shopping areas, because that's where people come. That's where creative energy happens. But we have to do it in a smart way and how we sort of reimagine that space. There's an amazing quote with an institution that Zach works with all the time, you know, Brookings. They recently did a study that stated, while diseases will come and go, we can always retrofit our cities to make sure people feel that they're delivering the proximity that we crave. We have to have proximity to people so that we have a vibrant and robust tourist economy and a vibrant and robust economy together. And so I think it's imperative for our leaders like us to make sure that we're thinking of creative and imaginative ways to keep having proximity and keep bringing people together in different and new ways.
You know, I know we want to talk a little bit about how we're emerging from this and recovery. And speaking of the downtown and keeping our downtown vibrant, traveler sentiment tells us that the first visitor business that will come back will be regional drive traffic. And if anybody saw the pictures of I-94 going, or 39 going north, we know people are in their cars, they want to move. And so we'll be focusing, again, in our swim lane about what we do well and what we do well. We are working on we got a grant from the Department of Tourism on an urban outdoors campaign of all the things you can do in an urban environment, from picnicking, and we're looking at, you know, having deliveries where people can picnic and call and have their food delivered. They can get on the lakes, they can go outdoors. We're really back to the experiences, as Zach talked about. Urban experiences are unparalleled, and we have so many opportunities, and that will be a real focus of ours. We are certainly going after conventions and conferences, but we're going to lean heavily into a regional drive, urban traffic, girlfriends, families, people that want to be together, because people do want to be together. I mean, and our mental health depends on it. We cannot keep staying disconnected, and so we are going to work very hard on making sure we bring people together in a safe way, in a way that they can feel comfortable and confident.
Absolutely. You know, my father lived in New York City the first time he ever came to Madison to visit me, and you know, I think he first kind of thought of Madison as a small college town, and then once he came here for the first time, as he was leaving to get on the airplane on the direct flight back to New York, he said, you know, I've come to realize is you have everything here that we have in New York, you just don't have 100 of them. And I think that's actually to our advantage, to Deb's point, which is when you hear these pundits, when you see the research around density, I think there is some truth to extreme density, really packed in 100 of everything kind of density. But you know, what you get here and what the opportunity is that Deb's talking about and that you're talking about, Jason, is you have an urban feel, you have urban opportunity, and very quickly from that you have recreational opportunities that are unparalleled and feel, you know, you can be 15 minutes out and be rural. And I think those are, you know, a unique blend of opportunity for us as a region. I'd also say, back to your original point, Jason, about density and the hand wringing about what it means. You need some level of density to have infrastructure, and infrastructure comes a lot, you know, about healthcare. And so there are things that are up. There is a tipping point on density, but we're well away from that tipping point when it comes to density in our downtown. But you know, I don't know how many people in this virtual meeting know, but you know, the DMI and Destination Madison early on evolved out of the chamber. And the reason for that wasn't like a break off or a breakup. It was a belief that, one, the supremacy of the downtown, that you have to have an engine that is vibrant and drives the rest of our economy. This region would not be what it is without our downtown. And that the visitor economy, the tourism economy is essential and needs its own platform, because we have to not talk about it as just a piece of the economy. We need to talk about it as a driver of the economy, which is what makes all this collaboration so important.
I think we have time for one more question before we get to some where we're going to move in the future and why we hope Madison is in a good position. It comes from all of our friends, Rich Lynch at Findorf, who has a specific question for Zach. Do you hear any discussion by the state, county, city leaders around accelerating public sector infrastructure work, driving re-employment in construction, manufacturing, et cetera, really solving a lot of the things that were happening now?
Yeah, and Rich is a board member of ours, so he knows our recovery agenda. You know, we're lobbying heavily at the local level, but also at the state and federal level. There's an increasing conversation at the federal level about a stimulus push that would involve infrastructure. We know just from economics that infrastructure investment writ large creates economic momentum and economic energy. Our hope is that we're pushing for that there will be additional infrastructure investment. I think it's one of the smartest things that we can see. We've heard the Democrats talk about it. The president has mentioned it. I think there's so much back and forth at the federal level. It's just not clear yet what the CARES 2 or HEROES 1 or whatever that we decide to give it will look like. At the state level, candidly, I'm pretty disappointed. If you had told me 3 months ago that the federal government would figure out its issues and get legislation pushed through before the state of Wisconsin could, I thought for sure that as a state, as a people, that we would set aside our political differences and get stuff done at the state level. And the fact that we seem to be incapacitated at the state level and all of the activities happening at the federal level, which I always assumed was more dysfunctional than the state level, and then we're seeing activity at the local level. But to Rich's point, we know it's important. We're actively pursuing it. It's also one of the reasons why we push for things like the F-35s. I know it was one of the things that it split the community, but a significant amount of investment came with that. And right now, construction companies can be bidding on great federal projects to build new hangars and new opportunities for a 30-year, $3 billion investment. And so it's top of mind for us, and we know it'll create economic activity, economic opportunity. And then the other thing is something that all three of us care passionately about is not losing momentum on trying to get the federal government to invest in our transit system here. That type of infrastructure investment would be a long-term game changer for this city, this community, this state.
Hey, Zach, I have a question. When you were talking about the next CARES Act, is that in addition to the EDA loans that are out there potentially through our regional economic development entities? Because those have infrastructure opportunities.
Yeah, this would be in addition to, this would be, think back at 08, 09, the Shovel Ready Recovery Act, the ARRA investments, that you heard the then President Obama talking about the need for massive infrastructure investment. It'd be that type of level of bridges, roads, buildings,
Okay.
Civic investments. One of the things that this community has always benefited from is that there's always been cranes in the skies, in construction cranes, and bird cranes as well, but in this case, construction cranes. And what we've always been able to do is that as the public sector was winding down, the private sector was winding up, and we just have created this symbiotic balance of construction. And I think to Rich's question, but I also think to his point, is we're going to need additional localized investment for infrastructure in order to jumpstart the economy.
I think another important project is that Alliant Energy Center project, right? That's very important for Deb and the team, and that's a potential area locally. So our last question, and Zach, this feeds into some great information and some great slides that Zach has for us to finish off, is Dave Benferato from MG&E asks, the Madison area seems to have a more resilient local economy than the rest of the state. And because of that, it may recover faster. Is that true, Zach? Kind of like he knew what you were going to say at the end. It was.
I didn't coordinate that with Dave, but I appreciate
we did not coordinate that, but great question.
Let me show my technological prowess and share my screen. Okay. Can everybody see that? Deb, Jason, can you see it? Great.
Yes.
Yep.
And so, to Dave's question is, he's right. There is light at the even in the darkest places. Many of you probably saw the headlines. Forbes had the using Moody analytics data had this line that said Durham, North Carolina, Madison, Wisconsin could enjoy this growth for years to come. On the left, you'll see the chart that Moody's put together. And one of it is about density, and so to Jason's point earlier, which is there's a belief that heavily dense areas are going to struggle in the recovery, and the other part is about the type of jobs that are here. That green curve is something that we've put in because we also think there's an adjustment that has to be made for cost of living. So although San Jose under the Moody data appears to be doing well, if you have to earn $254,000 to be able to afford the average home, it's just priced out of reach for most people. And so Raleigh, Durham, Madison, Wisconsin, those green circles are two economies that we track very closely, which are Denver, Boulder, and as one metro, and then Salt Lake City. And so we're bullish on what we saw at Forbes, but I think there's things that underlie that are even more important than that analysis. One, this is truly has the youngest professional workforce in the country. There are, as a percentage of our total population, we have more millennials and more 20-somethings than any other city. We also have more educated millennials other than Boston, which is we're tied for. And so when we're thinking about the youth of our economy, the trend lines all move in the right direction, that we know that 3 out of every 4 new Madison residents move. So those moving here are millennials. That's the highest percentage of any city in America, which means that the number that I showed you before is only increasing. The diversity of our economy. So when you think about this is not a chamber talking point when we say we have the most diverse economy in America. If you look at the blue lines here, these are our top line industries, our NAICS codes are the tent poles, so to speak. And then the gray hash marks are the averages, what the average MSA would look like, what the average metro would look like. And you can see just the stability and the fact that we just have more diversity in our economy than any other city in America, but certainly against the average metro. But most importantly, I think is and Jason referenced it, which is Brookings, who we do a lot of work. Brookings went out and looked at what are the hardest hit industries. And, Deb mentioned it, and it's true. You can see in the top right-hand corner, we know that tourism and leisure and hospitality were the first to be hit and will be likely the last to recover coming out of this crisis. But when you look at their data, and they gave us access to all of their raw data, when you analyze the different metros around the country, Madison ranks 335th out of 384 in the risk of recovery. And so lower is better in this situation. But most importantly is that we went out and we pulled out a lot of the smaller metros, and we just looked at metros that had more than 50,000 jobs at risk. So more than 50,000 jobs in those 5 categories in the top right-hand corner. And Madison has the 4th lowest recovery risk in the country, which means that the economic opportunity for us, if we do this right, if we are collaborative and smart, means that Madison will remain, but has the opportunity to accelerate into being one of the bright spots of the American recovery. And that's something that we should both celebrate, be excited about, but not take for granted and do the work that is necessary to get us there.
Well, that is our time for today. A huge thank you to both Zach and Deb for not only their continued leadership, but for participating in this panel today. So thank you, Zach. Thank you, Deb. We continue to look forward to the continued partnership and collaboration with both your organizations to make sure that Madison does exactly what that Zach just says, to live up to some of the great numbers we have as a baseline to recover quickly, because there are a lot of people in this community that are not doing well. And so I think us working together will really make a difference. And as always, let us at DMI know how we can help both of your organizations make sure that you guys survive and thrive. To wrap up, I want to make sure to thank our sponsors today, Whipley LLP, our major series sponsor, Ho-Chunk Gaming, Madison, Michael Best and Friedrich, State Bank of Cross Plains, our monthly sponsor this month, Boardman and Clark. Thank you to Allison, the Edgewater Hotel, UW Health, Unity Point Health Meritor, and Quartz. We certainly appreciate all of you guys. We had over 200 people attending here today. Thank you for taking the time out. Again, we will be recording this and it will be on our YouTube channel. We have a tremendous amount of virtual events coming up over the next few weeks. So please check out www.downtownmadison.org for all of our events. I would certainly like to make a plug for my two friends. Zach is doing tremendous work on his virtual lunches live. Deb is doing tremendous things to make sure that our community is safe. So please go to their sites as well and support those organizations in the great virtual events that they're running as well. We have a quick survey at the end. We would love if you guys could quickly fill that out. That gives us great information as to what you guys are looking for in these virtual programs as we continue to move these forward coming up. Most importantly, we want all of you to remain healthy and safe in the next few weeks. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to help your business. We're all here, all three of us, Destination Madison, the Greater Chamber, and DMI are here to help. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and thank you very much for attending.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks, Jason, for the leadership. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks, Zach.